They laughed at the janitor until the system she warned them about took down the entire company overnight. They called her invisible, like she was part of the furniture. Every morning by 6 a.m., she scrubbed the floors of a tech empire she could never afford to work, at least not officially. A billion-dollar company with a skyline view, and the only black woman on the floor wasn't even allowed in meetings. Her name was Miss Loretta, 55 years old, grease-stained uniform. Quiet, but her eyes never missed a thing. She moved through server rooms and code-laced screens like a ghost, soaking in conversations no one thought she could understand. Until one day, she overheard something strange. A dev team bragging about skipping a redundancy protocol to speed up deployment. "No one will notice," they said. "Besides, who's gonna stop USA Janitor?" They laughed. She didn't. That night, she stayed an extra hour. Not to clean, but to watch, to dig. And what she found made her heart stop. There was a back door buried in the system they didn't even know was open. She tried to speak up, quietly, respectfully. But when she told a supervisor what she saw, he waved her off like a bug. "Ma'am, this is real engineering. Please don't waste our time." So she stayed silent, for now. But something inside her had shifted and the storm was already coming. The next week, things got worse. Miss Loretta noticed the network behaving strangely, like it was lagging in ways she hadn't seen before. Lights on the servers flickering. Login errors across screens left open overnight. She tried again, this time going to a younger engineer she'd once seen sketching in a notebook during his lunch break. Maybe he'd listen. She waited until no one was around. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "I think your system's got a leak." He blinked, confused, then smirked. "With all due respect, ma'am, what would you know about back-end architecture?" And just like that, the conversation was over. Word spread fast. They started mocking her behind her back. "The code janitor," one of them whispered, "trying to be our savior." Some even made jokes when she walked by loud enough for her to hear. But Miss Loretta didn't break. She just watched. Every night, she made a copy of the logs no one checked. Every morning, she ran cleanup scripts on a terminal she wasn't supposed to touch. She didn't need their permission. She needed the truth. And then on a Friday afternoon, the truth hit back. Hard. The entire system crashed. Emails, payments, security, gone in seconds. People screamed, phones rang, monitors went black. And as chaos spread through the office, Miss Loretta quietly walked to her cart and opened a locked drawer. Inside that drawer was an old USB drive scratched, unlabeled, and forgotten by everyone except her. It held one thing, a clean backup she'd quietly compiled over weeks. Every log, every vulnerability, every patch they ignored. She hadn't just predicted the crash, she'd prepared for it. Meanwhile, the office descended into madness. The billionaire CEO was already in the building for a quarterly meeting. His face turned redder by the second as teams scrambled, tossing jargon like confetti. Server rollback, cloud sync, DNS override. Nothing worked. Every failsafe they thought they had? Gone. Deleted. Replaced by corrupted code planted months ago by a rogue subcontractor who'd slipped through the cracks they created. The same cracks Miss Loretta had tried to warn them about. And now, with no working access, all eyes finally turned to her. It was the younger engineer who said it first. "Wait, she mentioned something. About a leak." The room went silent. One of the senior devs scoffed. "You're not seriously suggesting we ask the janitor for help?" But they didn't have a choice. The billionaire barked, "Get her in here, now." And for the first time in 25 years, Miss Loretta didn't have to knock. She walked through the glass doors like she belonged there. And what she said next froze the room. She didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. She looked the billionaire in the eye and said, "You built your empire on shortcuts. I warned you. Now it's bleeding from the inside." The room fell silent. Not from fear, from disbelief. This was the woman they never invited to speak. The one who mopped up their messes, literally? Now she was standing at the center of a digital meltdown, holding the one thing none of them had. a working blueprint. But the CEO didn't like being made to look small. "Are you telling me you know more than my engineers?" he snapped. "No," she replied calmly. "I'm telling you I know what they missed." She walked to the main terminal, plugged in her drive, and began restoring the critical node clusters. No one dared stop her. Not even the lead architect who'd once laughed when she tried to clean under his desk. Every keystroke she typed brought life back into the system. Monitors lit up. Access returned. Data began syncing. It was working. And that's when the twist hit. As she navigated the logs, Miss Loretta found something no one expected. Someone inside the company had installed the back door on purpose. It wasn't sabotage. It was theft. And the person responsible was still in the building. The room turned ice cold. Miss Loretta didn't even need to name names, the log trail did it for her. There, buried in a permissions script, was the smoking gun elevated access granted to an external shell linked to a dummy consulting firm. But the IP trace? It came from inside the building. Someone high up had created the breach, rerouted payments, and quietly skimmed company funds while blaming system lag. And now, with Loretta's backup logs restored, there was proof. The engineers leaned in. Eyes darted. Whispers began. "Check Jenkins' branch," someone muttered. "He was pushing ghost commits last month." But Miss Loretta wasn't done. She pointed at the monitor and said one word. "Scroll." And that's when the culprit's name appeared. Not Jenkins, not some intern. It was the VP of Infrastructure. The same man who told her to stick to mopping floors. The same man who had rushed out of the building minutes after the crash began. The billionaire's face twisted not in shock, but in fury. "Find him," he said. "Now." But Miss Loretta had already forwarded the logs to legal. Quietly, thoroughly. While they panicked, she planned. Still, the system wasn't fully stable yet. One more vulnerability remained done that could still bring the whole thing down. And she was the only one who saw it. She stared at the final red flag in the codebase, see a dormant command, hidden in a shell script, set to trigger a full wipe at midnight. It was elegant, malicious, and smart enough to survive a reboot. "If this runs," she whispered, "they lose everything again." But as her fingers hovered above the keyboard, she paused. The command wasn't just dangerous, it was booby-trapped. Any incorrect override would activate it early. One mistake, and it was game over. Meanwhile, the billionaire barked orders across the floor. He wanted Loretta to fix it fast. "Do you understand what we're risking?" he snapped. "Yes," she said quietly. "More than you do," because she saw the deeper problem. The command wasn't written by the VP, no. The coding style, the variable set, was someone else. Someone still trusted. Someone sitting just a few feet behind her. She turned her head slowly. The young engineer, the one who smirked when she warned him. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. Her heart pounded. He'd set it up. Maybe out of ambition. Maybe for revenge. Either way, the clock was ticking. And now Loretta had to make a choice. Expose him publicly, or disarm the trap quietly and let karma handle the rest. But just as she reached for the keyboard, he spoke. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said, barely above a whisper. The words were soft, but in the silence, they landed like gunshots. Everyone turned. The room froze. The young engineer stood there, face pale, eyes wide with something between guilt and panic. "I just wanted to prove they needed me," he continued. "They never listened to my warnings either. I thought if the system glitched, they'd finally see. But he hadn't meant for it to collapse. He never expected someone like her to catch it." Miss Loretta didn't say a word. She simply stepped aside and pointed at the console. "Then fix it," she said. "Right here, right now." His hands shook. He sat, typed, tried to undo what he'd built. But he couldn't. The code was deeper than he realized, messier. Layered with recursion and failsafes he didn't even recognize. "It's locking me out," he whispered. 2. Can't stop it. The billionaire stared, stunned, then turned to Loretta. "Can you?" She nodded once. Quiet. Controlled. Not to show off. Not to embarrass. Just because she could. And in under 4 minutes, she did what none of them could. She neutralized the code, sealed the breach, and patched the system clean. But before anyone could thank, Hershey spoke first. You still haven't asked why I knew how to do all this. And that's when the real story began. I used to be one of you, she said, her voice steady, long before I ever touched a mop. The words hit like thunder. Confusion swept the room. Wait, what do you mean? One of the execs asked. Miss Loretta didn't hesitate. I was a systems architect, MIT graduate. Designed early fail-safes for Fortune 500 firms before most of you finished high school. The billionaire's jaw clenched. Then why the hell are you here? She met his gaze, unflinching. Because 10 years ago, after I blew the whistle on a company hiding user data leaks, I was blacklisted. Quietly, efficiently. No job offers. No callbacks. No interviews. Just silence. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice never wavered. I lost everything. My house. My reputation. People stopped returning my calls, so I did what I had to do to survive. She glanced down at her uniform. This was the only job that didn't ask for references. The room was dead quiet. The same people who once mocked her now stood frozen, reeling. You could have let us fall, the younger engineer whispered. You should have. She looked at him, eyes soft. Maybe, but someone once gave me a second chance. I decided to be better than the people who took mine away. Then her phone buzzed. A message from a journalist. They wanted her story. And they weren't the only ones. By the next morning, her name was everywhere. The janitor who saved $1 billion. Dollar tech firm. Headlines. Lit up like wildfire. Interviews. Podcasts. TV crews parked outside the building. And for once, they weren't asking for the CEO. They were asking for her, Miss Loretta. The woman they overlooked. The woman they laughed at. The woman who watched them fail, then saved them anyway. The story spread faster than any press release the company had ever paid for. And with it came something they didn't expect. Accountability. Shareholders demanded answers. How did a former systems architect end up scrubbing floors? Who buried her resume? Who blacklisted her after she told the truth a decade ago? One name came up again and again. The CEO himself. Turns out, he sat on the board of the very company that ruined her career years earlier. It wasn't just negligence, it was personal. And now, the board wanted him gone. In less than 72 hours, he stepped down to focus on family. The VP? Indicted. The young engineer? Terminated. And Miss Loretta? She didn't just get her old job back. She got offers from Google, IBM, and even the White House. But she turned them all down because there was one thing left she had to do, and it wasn't about code. She walked back into the office one last time with a mop, not with a cart, but with a briefcase. Same halls, same desks, but this time they stood when she entered. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just headed straight to the conference room, where it all fell apart and where something new was about to begin. Because Miss Loretta wasn't coming back as an employee. She was coming back as a partner. After everything they did to silence her, after every name they called her, the board offered her equity in the company she saved. She declined the chair, took the shares. Then, did something they never saw coming. She created a foundation. A program to retrain formerly incarcerated Black women in cybersecurity, funded by the very firm that once erased her. If I was invisible in that room, she said in a live interview, imagine how many others still are. The clip went viral. Millions watched. Thousands donated. But to her, it wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure no one like her would ever be overlooked again. And when a reporter asked what advice she'd give to anyone cleaning offices with untold talent, she smiled and said, don't just keep your head down. Keep your eyes open. They don't see you coming until it's too late.